So it's a campaign of convergence. You've got Crook's column coming up from the south, and maybe we'll have a map or a visual or something on the video.
Well, now we will.
Third here.
Thanks for the extra work, Jim.
You got Crook coming up from the south. We're visual learners, aren't
Yes,
we?
apparently we are.
Prepare for this discussion with the materials our audience used by scanning this QR code or by clicking the link in the description. Then, join us in the comment section.
Welcome to Addressing History's Tavern Talks. If you're new here, this isn't your typical history lecture. We're here to break down the barriers between the historian and the public. No podium, no dais, everyone is equal. Here at the tavern, we flip the script, and you, the audience, are the star. Your thoughts, your questions, and your perspectives take center stage in a conversation that is as casual as it is critical. And there's no better place to reclaim that tradition than in a tavern like this one, at the historic Mansion House 1757 in Fairfield, Pennsylvania. Tonight, we are tackling one of the most iconic and misunderstood figures and moments in American history, George Armstrong Custer and the Battle of the Little Bighorn. The nation was still healing from the Civil War, and westward expansion was the driving dream of the era. Under the so-called peace policy of President Ulysses S. Grant, native nations were to be confined to reservations. But in 1874, when gold was discovered in the Black Hills, sacred Lakota land guaranteed to them by treaty, that fragile peace was shattered. The government policy demanded that the tribes move onto their reservations by the winter of 1876. And when they didn't, the U.S. Army was sent to enforce it. The Army's plan for that campaign was ambitious. 3 columns of troops would converge on the northern plains to trap and subdue the hostiles, as non-compliant natives were called. One of those columns was led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and his 7th Cavalry. But the native nations were not a disorganized enemy. They were a coalition of Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors led by a remarkable array of leaders. They were fighting not just for land, but for their very survival. What happened on those rolling Montana hillsides has been debated ever since. Was it hubris, miscommunication, or an inevitable clash of cultures? Tonight, we're not here to lecture you on the answers. Instead, you'll join the tavern audience and our guest, Little Bighorn historian and Gettysburg licensed battlefield guide, Jim Hessler, as we try to make sense of it all. So grab a drink and belly up to the bar with us as we get this conversation started on George Armstrong Custer and the Battle of the Little Bighorn. All right, so let's start with this. What do we think of George Custer today? What do we think of him today? Whatever that means to you, whoever the we is.
You. What does it mean to you? What do you think?
You could be part of the we. You are part of the we.
Are we on the air now?
You know, you ruined the art of it when you just go, are we going? Yes, we're going.
Is this pregame or
Just go along with us here, Ralph.
Yeah.
Well, I'll
Yeah, Mike Lentz.
I know him more for his Civil War stuff than I do for his post-Civil War career. Now, and I admired the general of the Valley of 1864, the general here at East Cavalry Field, you know, really being the hero of the Union Army.
Mm.
But growing up, I grew up in Colorado. And we have an association in Colorado with Black Kettle.
Right.
And growing up in the 90s, I had a very negative view of Custer because of what happened to Black Kettle at the Washington.
Okay.
And so for me, even though he did not order that Black Kettle's death, Black Kettle's blood was on his hands. And that's kind of how I saw him before really diving into his Civil War career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty common. Greg Irwin started his classic book, Custer Victorious, off with the America Custer Forgot, and I think that's true. He's one of these unique characters that his Western career overshadows his Civil War career. It's not right, but it's kind of the way it is.
Yeah, there's in that book, it opens up with a scene, and I might be getting the details wrong because it's been such a long time since I read that, but I remember reading it, and like my heart was pounding through the whole thing. It's I believe it's a story of a Union prisoner of war. Well, he is a Union prisoner of war, but I believe he was like 17 and he lied to be able to get into the service.
Okay.
And his first fight, he gets captured and he's kicking himself and he's like, why did I do that? It was so stupid. And they're marching him along at musket point with a bunch of other POWs. And all of a sudden there's this commotion.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the woods, this circus rider with reins in his teeth and pistols like Rooster Cogburn.
Yeah.
And then he's followed by a bunch of Union cavalrymen and they're rescued. And like, to me, that's Custer.
That's Custer.
Yeah.
That's the Custer you grew up with. What about anybody else? What do you guys think? Rich.
And I grew up on the other coast from Mike, of course, in the east, but, definitely it came up with him, as kind of a hero. Fearless, maybe too fearless, and that's the criticism that comes in. But the guy had a pretty impressive record,
Yeah.
and he was a fighter, and
Even the bad parts of his record were impressive,
were impressive.
right? Like last in his class.
Yeah.
So many demerits.
Do we know anybody like that? Anybody here?
Has his record been broken for most
Not
demerits?
that I know of.
Right.
726.
So he's holding pretty long,
Yeah.
Good for him. But go ahead, I interrupted you.
No, I and again, and I've talked to Jim about this before, is there's this mystique about Custer's Last Stand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a mystique about the Alamo because it's a command that's completely lost, and you almost feel like you're only getting one side of the story. But yeah, I think he was a good military. I wouldn't put him up there as a military genius.
I would.
But I think he was a fighter, and I think that's what he was hired to do. That's what the Army paid him for.
Carolyn,
Yeah.
what did you say?
I said I think he was a genius tactically.
Okay.
I mean, when you put him in combat, he never made a mistake. Well, until
Well,
the end.
That
That is a big mistake.
One
But,
bad day
one
at the
bad
office,
day
they
and
never
we're gonna
let you
judge
get
him.
it down,
But
right?
you know what?
But-
Tactically in combat, he was
Concerts?
pretty remarkable.
Oh, what's that?
I said tactically in combat, he was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Even when he would make a mistake, there was always somebody there to bail him
Yes,
out, right?
Custer's luck.
Well, that's
You
right.
got it.
And that's a big part
That's
of
a
it,
big
which
part of
which
it.
fails
Well,
him on that
how about
last day.
Napoleon? Would Napoleon ever promote anybody without asking the question, is he lucky?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
That's part of life and success.
Yeah, got to be good to be lucky.
Now, wait. So that's what we think. Everybody mentioned Civil War Custer, right?
Yeah.
The good Custer, the Custer we want to remember. But there's the post-Civil War Custer, and most people who've only like heard his name but don't really know a lot about him, I would argue, know that Custer and
I agree.
hate that Custer.
Yes, agree. Totally
Right?
agree.
Steve
Well, I
Byers.
think that Custer, especially in the 21st century, has been shaped by even Hollywood.
Yes.
Like,
Mhm.
Yes.
think of the
Yeah.
Night at the Museum movies. Like,
Oh, gosh, yes.
Hader's like, he's like, I got an idea,
And it's really
and we charge.
Yeah.
and then like going back even into the 90s,
Big man.
you know what I'm gonna say, but Dr. Quinn.
Going back even to the
Yeah.
90s.
But, like,
Yeah, yeah.
but that portrayal of Custer and from Hollywood from the last 25 years has been
Well,
very,
go back to the 60s.
Yeah.
He's a psychopath.
Little
Go
big
back to Little Big Man.
Yeah.
right?
Little Big
It's
Man.
the Vietnam
Yes.
generation.
Yeah.
It's the hippies. You got Custer as kind of this raving maniac. Now, I'm calling you out. You just admitted you watched Dr. Quinn, so I have to give you credit for that. But
Jay Seymour, I rest my case.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, even in the 70s, when you have those commercials with the Native American and they're crying,
Yeah,
and
right.
Yeah.
that kind of sets a tone. So if you have that, then you must have a villain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
who's going to be that villain? And
Okay.
Custer's
It's
gotta
the
be
natural.
Custer.
It's gotta be
Yeah.
Custer.
Yeah. Okay, so Custer, the Indian fighter, our opinion of him, up, down, indifferent.
What's the good question?
Custer, the Indian fighter.
I think it's complex.
Come on,
I
man.
don't
Who else
think
was going to
there's-
fight the Indians? Who else was going to fight the Indians?
Okay, so a thumbs up. So-so, says Debbie.
All right.
You say complex.
Complicated.
Every so-so, we're so-so.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
You know-
Indian fighter as in like, was he a good Indian fighter? But I
Yeah.
mean that part
But I
of
think he
his
gets
life.
labeled as the Indian fighter, but he's really not.
I think-
yeah,
but
but
not
not the
the
only
Self-labeled
I
himself the
think it-
Indian fighter.
yeah.
He's self-labeled.
There
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you take that sort of instead of Indian fighter, more of is the plainsman, the frontiersman. You know, how do you,
Yes.
you've got the Civil War bracket of his career, and then you have his life on the
Yeah.
plains.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about the
Which
plain
keeps them
celebrity,
kids.
though. A guy that operated with
Right.
no social media, constantly in
Correct.
the news,
Yeah.
politicking with people
Absolutely.
in Washington. I
Yeah.
mean, a type of celebrity that we can't really even comprehend.
Five
Right.
years old.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
If he were around today, he'd be podcasting, but he's not. So, yeah.
and I have a question.
Yeah.
For this reputation that he develops as an Indian fighter, how many times did he actually fight the Indians?
Let's talk
Well,
about
that's a good point too.
that. Yeah.
How many times did
Case-
he win?
And we were talking about this out in the front. I mean, we doing our homework with the Donahue interview that Jim did.
Phil
Fights
Donahue.
him Phil. Michael, of course, he fights him 4 times, which I think goes into our conversation about the reputation. How much of his Indian fighterness comes out of just being the plain celebrity, the buckskin, the,
Right.
you know, the hunter.
He's an image.
But-
He's
Yeah.
interesting to look at.
Right.
The
Right.
Cavalier and Buckskin, as
Yeah.
Robert Utley called him.
But he's also indicative of the U.S. Army post the Civil War.
Yeah.
We like to think of the United States Army in the Civil War as these freedom fighters. But the United States Army after the Civil War, they're executing a policy of a war of conquest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a pretty thing for Americans to admit to. And so he's really symbolic of that period in American military history.
Well, we're kind of skipping around here, but what was the army like, Jim? Like they weren't the army of the Civil War.
Right. So you guys saw this in your reading and your handout. What happens after the Civil War? What does the United States government basically do after every war? They demobilize, they downsize. So we go from something like 1 million men serving at the end of the Civil War to something like 25,000. I mean, 25,000 guys policing
A continent.
the Western Plains and Reconstruction in the South. It's insane. So you've got a downsized army. You could argue a demoralized army. It's certainly the quality of the recruits, and you mentioned kind of the freedom fighters of the Civil War. It's a different mission.
Yeah.
It's a different assignment. He doesn't adapt to that
He does it.
right away. And that's, we talk about reconciling this with the Civil War. It's Custer, it's Hancock, it's Howard, it's John Gibbon. It's a lot of these guys going out there and taking time to sort of adapt to that.
And somebody said that 25,000 to police the continent, right? We were talking. I guess I guess it was on the History Things podcast, and we
Okay,
were talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
Little Bighorn, and we were talking about how like a regiment would have its home base, but there'd be
Yeah.
all these outposts that the companies would go to hundreds of miles away from each other.
Right.
And like how with a 35 men or like what was the company size at that time? It wasn't full strength for most
Well,
part,
that's
right?
the thing, by the time, for the most part, they're usually like half strength, 35, 40 guys.
So
not even
35, 40
half.
guys
Yeah,
at an
yeah.
outpost, I mean, it's amazing they were able to accomplish anything.
And the command structure is a little bit different, isn't it? It's not quite the same as it was during the Civil War, because Custer goes back to being a lieutenant colonel, whereas at the end of the Civil War, he's a general.
Yeah,
He's
so
rough.
go on, Caroline.
Well,
Yes.
his breveted rank is reduced to his regular army rank.
Which was captain.
And that was really hard for a lot of these
Yeah.
guys to
Yeah.
tolerate.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
the quality of the recruits, I mean, you guys just went out to Fort Abraham Lincoln. One of the things that always fascinated me was you go up to the cemetery and you read the stones in that cemetery about all these guys dying. What are they dying of? They're killing themselves.
Exposure,
They're
cabin
drunk. They're drunk and they're drowning, or they're drunk and they're
Sickness.
asphyxiating, and
Yeah.
you just read that on the stones up there, and the army was terribly demoralized.
But what were so when
Yeah.
you're reading those stones, were their names like Nelson and Smith and Jones, or were they more like Giovanni Martini and
Well,
like were they
some
different names than we're used to
some
seeing in the
Germans
Civil
and
War?
names
Yeah.
that we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like it's an army of immigrants. There's a lot of immigrants.
Heavy on immigrants, right? And so you don't speak the language. The officers, who in many cases may still be more of your Yankee stock, so to speak, they can't always communicate with the enlisted men and vice versa.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you say, it's a recipe for not getting anything done. And before we go on, you mentioned alcohol. I do want to take a sip for my prop here, since we're behind the bar. So as we know, Custer is a teetotaler. He had given up alcohol at an early age, and I thought it would be appropriate, since I did not have my red scarf here
Right, you gotta
tonight,
have
to channel
something.
that I would channel George with a hearty glass of milk. So, not everyone. There you go.
Salute.
Tut tut. I would join you, but I hate milk.
It was good. It's good.
Mike.
Even going off of what Debbie was saying about command structure, we know Custer in the 7th Cavalry, of course. But who's the actual commander of the 7th
Right.
Cavalry?
Right.
Yes.
See, even the commanding officers are elsewhere.
Exactly.
And you
Yes,
have
good
like
point.
desk officers and field officers.
So we should close the loop on that, because you're right. So at the end of the Civil War, he reverts back to captain. He's lucky to get lieutenant colonel of the 7th Cavalry. I mean, he's lucky to get that, because there's a lot of brevets and generals out there who are jockeying for some kind of position. But to Mike's point, at no time during the remainder of his life does Custer actually command the 7th Cavalry. There is always a colonel above him, anchored to a desk in St. Louis or wherever that could be. So it's ironic we think of him as the commander of the 7th Cavalry, but this brevet major general from the Civil War is not even able to rise to command of a regiment during the last 9 to 10 years of his
Yeah.
life.
We like to say it's Custer's 7th Cavalry. Or
Yeah.
he's taking his 7th Cavalry. It's like,
Right.
well, it's not technically his.
Right.
Right. There's no AJ Smith fanboys out there, right? Because it's Custer, right?
So what do we think about the Indian policy of the 1870s and the Grant administration in particular? Since this is when the hell I don't know how you could drink it like that. It's so gross. They put some chocolate in it or something.
Do we have chocolate back here?
I don't know. There's probably some
Yeah.
chocolate liqueur. But no, so what do we think? How about the Indian policy? Do you think it was fair, unfair? And how about Grant's attitude
Yeah.
towards the Indians?
How do you reconcile Grant, your Civil War hero, against the policies of the
He's a
1870s?
pragmatist.
Yeah.
Well, and I think at this point, he's trying to run a country and do its best. It's not about what's fair or not fair.
True.
The country's trying to survive.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wasn't there some kind of depression or recession or
Yes.
some kind of
Yeah.
economic
Right,
issue?
right?
Yeah. So he's got to deal with all that.
Yep. Yep.
As somebody who will always see the eyes, right? I'm always going to see the world through a native's eyes versus the East Coast. It's always going to be my eyes. I struggle with this a lot because there are stories that I still live with, that the oppression you would say that I still grew up with. But at some level, Grant is always a pragmatist. He was a pragmatist on how he ended the Civil War. He's a pragmatist in what we need to do here. And as much as I do not wish what happened to happen, I don't know how you not have what happened.
How could it
But
have
what
gone?
speak for the people at home? When you're saying what happened, speak more plainly.
So I mean, Grant was a pragmatist in the sense of he threw, everything at the Civil War to end it.
Right.
It was not pretty. There's a lot of people who do not like how he did because
Right.
it seemed like it go over the edge, but he was trying to end it faster instead of have it
Right.
drag out. That's pragmatist.
So
in
he
my
was
mind.
willing to do what needed to be done. Yeah.
because he saw the willingness that the South was willing to fight, and you
Yeah.
had to go the extra 10 to 15% in order to end it sooner rather than have it be there for years and years and years.
Mhm.
I don't see how the Indian policy doesn't happen in the US. I don't see how it doesn't happen. I don't see how the number of people who need to, I don't know who said survive, rebuild a life, don't have, especially after the Civil War, and there is a have that you can get if you go west.
Yeah.
I don't see how this doesn't happen.
Of course.
And unfortunately, the natives were in the way.
Yeah.
And the cat was
And
out of
Case.
the
I
bag.
don't remember Grant being a radical equality person when it came to black and enslaved individuals either, so I don't think it's hard to see him having subjective views against another black and brown population that he saw second class. I mean, he can have sympathy for that.
Yeah.
But the policy,
And so I just want to kind of get to this. So when we talk policy, there's going to be a lot of people, general audience, living at home or listening at home, who are going to kind of be
Hopefully
like,
they're living.
well, hopefully they're living too. You know, there's going to be a lot of people listening at home who are going to kind of be like, extermination of the Indians and that sort of thing. Did Grant pursue a policy of pure extermination, or what's he really going for?
Yeah.
Containment.
Yeah, go on.
So Grant is not going for pure extermination.
Right.
He's going for what anthropologists would call ethnocide, which is destruction of culture, making them Christian, making them civilized on agencies.
Yeah.
And so for his time period, that is a bit tame compared to a good Indian as a dead Indian.
Right, I was going to say.
Okay.
Sheridan.
Sheridan, yeah.
But even so, I mean, this is where our modern interpretations influence how we see the past. Because for modern audiences, for those sitting at home, that's abhorrent. You are killing the people's culture. You're killing their identity.
Yeah.
You might not
Yeah.
be killing their bodies, but you're killing their history.
But
their
what's
language.
interesting though
Yeah.
is that Grant, who's just trying to kill their culture, who does he have carrying out his
Sheridan.
policy? Is
Right.
Sheridan, who's the only
That's
good
the
Indian is a dead Indian.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, if you gotta,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
And you know, and again, just for a general audience sake, this was a debate that was going on even at that time. And what you tended to have was people in the eastern cities reading Last of the Mohicans, the noble red man, and that sort of thing. You know, the typical frontier settler,
Right.
or the members of the
Yeah.
army like Custer, who dealt with Native Americans on a frequent basis, had a very different view on
Yeah.
it. So the debates we have today about it, they occurred back then, and it wasn't as black and white.
But the moderates aren't going west. The people
No.
who go
Yeah.
west are
Right.
fundamentalists.
Yeah.
They
I
are
know.
so motivated by whatever they see through their prism. They're the ones going west, either because they're so hungry to survive and their survival is going to kick in, or they are so whatever their doctrine is, they're going to push the
You know,
doctrine.
you're painting kind of a bleak picture on it with survival and hunger and all that.
Yeah.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
it was expansion.
Yeah.
It's expansion.
It's
you
an
got
opportunity.
you got the opportunity, the American spirit,
Yeah.
and railroads and all that
American
stuff.
dream.
Right.
It's inevitable. It's
Yeah,
inevitable.
yeah.
Because there's no instance in history where a society that doesn't even have the wheel, never mind a written language other than pictograms,
Oh, good
doesn't
point.
get subsumed by
Yeah.
the more civilized,
Yeah.
technologically advanced society.
Right.
It just happens.
True.
Right.
The term we're missing is manifest destiny.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And we're talking about Custer tonight. We're not necessarily talking about all the sins of the Indian Wars, but the problem that Custer has with his image is Custer might literally be the only person from that era that most people have heard of.
Right.
So he's the poster boy for
And,
that.
and it's not unreasonable because if you look at the papers,
Yeah.
there was a noble savage feeling. There was a Eastern elite Ivy League sense. They were inviting Indian leaders to come
Sure.
speak at Harvard.
Right.
And then Little Bighorn. And it changed overnight. Now they were savages.
Right.
And this was a war. They killed American soldiers. And it really, when you see it in the papers, when you look through, the New York Times collected bound volumes, which most libraries have, when you look from June 76 on, because it's a very important time because we were heading into the American bicentennial.
Centennial.
And now Centennial, I'm sorry. But you know what I mean, it's a big this. World's
Big
Fair
to
in
do, yeah,
Philadelphia,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
big stuff
A lot of
happening.
stuff going
and
on.
all of a sudden this happens.
Right.
Right.
And you really see a sea change in public perception. And I don't think the Indian campaigns that occurred from 76 to the Ghost Dance would have been possible except for the change in public sentiment against the Indians.
No, but that's good though, Ralph. I'm glad that you admit that you grew up, because I think that's a huge point. And because I used to think Custer, the other way. Like when I was younger, I thought Custer was awesome because he had that dash, right? And I'm like, what a clown! Like, what balls does it take to dress different from everybody, ride 100 yards ahead of them while they're all trying to catch up to you straight into the enemy line? A young man loves that stuff, right? As you get older, you temper that and you go, man, I could never imagine doing that. Like, I think that's crazy, And then as far as the Indian Wars go, it's like everything. I look at things that go on today and I don't understand most of them. And people who think it's this way or that way, I think are deluding themselves. I think you're insane.
Yeah.
Because it's not. It's complex. It's complicated, just like it was back then, because human beings are involved. And everybody has blood on their hands in a war.
It goes back to Manifest Destiny. These cards were lining up and the writing was on the wall. Red Bull saw it.
Yeah.
Writing's on the wall.
Red Cloud? Red Bull?
I think they had
You thirsty? Red Cloud.
I'm under the influence of Robert Buckley and T. Brown on that.
Oh, I read Red Cloud.
Yeah, that's okay. I thought you were asking for a drink. All right, so not Red Cloud. Black Hills. This keeps getting brought up.
Okay.
We also mentioned gold. Let's get into that because the Black Hills are very important
Yes,
in this whole story.
So we'll come to this. So the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie, which ends Red Cloud's War, basically by treaty guarantees the Black Hills to the Sioux. Now, the Sioux, for various reasons, value the Black Hills greatly, and they had taken it from other tribes.
No, that's impossible. It's always been there, sacred ground.
But from 68 to 74, before we get into gold, too, I want to add in the railroads. Because the railroads never get enough play in this, but the Western Expansion, Northern Pacific Railroad, are cutting through the Sioux grounds. Now, remember, part of the Fort Laramie Treaty includes this idea, too, of unceded territory west of the Black Hills, which the Sioux can continue to hunt for as long as the buffalo basically roam. So you've got this treaty. Railroads are coming through in the early 1870s. Let's get to the gold. 1874, Black Hills. You already have white people encroaching in the Black Hills. There's already reports and rumors of gold. So 74, Custer and the 7th Cavalry, under orders, lead an expedition into the Black Hills to confirm what people already knew, that there is gold in the Black Hills, and that's going to open up a gold rush into the Sioux's guaranteed sacred land.
And how many men does he have on that expedition? Is it a big one?
I think it's a big one. I forget the numbers.
1,500, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
It's not all cavalry. It's a mix of...
And he's got prospectors
Right.
and newspaper reporters, the whole 9 yards. It's a big...
So the whole bunch of Gabby Hayes types
Yeah.
out there.
I would say it's like that idea of manifest destiny that starts with O'Sullivan in the 1840s, and it goes through, and you have the painting American Progress by Nass. Like that was like almost like once that ball got rolling, I don't think anything's going to stop it. And unfortunately, like when we think of like somebody like Custer, he's just a cog in it. He's not causing it. He's not,
Well, and that's the
purposely-
point Jim always
Yeah.
makes, is a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army is not making Indian policy in the 1870s or even today.
I tried to make that
He's
before.
gonna be
That's
the
exactly right.
But
just like we were. Sorry, finish.
I was just going to say, but like what the problem is, and how American history is taught even today in schools, is when you talk about this period of American history, you learn three things essentially: the American Progress painting, Custer dies, Ghost Dance, Sitting Bull is killed, and see that's your concept of this period.
And there's a lot of years and a lot of stuff in between.
A lot of stuff and a lot of years in between there.
How would you describe him? What do you think he is?
Ambitious.
Ambitious, just plain
I
old
don't think
ambitious.
it's like people say like Custeriana, kind of like
Okay.
know stuff. I think he was an ambitious man,
And is there anything wrong with that?
I mean, I do not think so.
I don't
No,
think
I
so.
don't either.
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
either. How about this side
Yeah,
of the
His
room?
ambition
Anything?
would spend your
Also-
life.
Yeah.
Well,
He's a product of his experiences, his courting of the press. Who was he a staff officer with in the Civil War? McClellan and Pleasanton. I mean, you're getting a front row seat on how to deal with the press. And so, yeah, he's very much a subject of his experiences in life and how he goes about, especially also in the Civil War as well.
It's someone we could all relate to. Not everybody, but somebody that maybe struck lucky or the gold early in life
Yeah.
and then really wanted to kind of get that spot.
It's that
and was
kid that peaked
desperate.
too early in high school.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and he's been trying to get it back
In the
ever
NFL,
since.
he wound up coaching high school.
Yeah.
100%. We all have friends that were really popular in high school.
Yeah.
But then just, maybe
Or
fizzled out.
get beyond high school. I mean, in jobs, you get promoted early, you make
Yeah.
vice
Right.
president early, and then you peak.
So he was the
And how
point
do you
general, and
recapture
now
that?
he's the frontiersman. He's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the frontier is so desolate, and the press isn't everywhere like it is
Right.
back east,
Right.
and the battles aren't big, and the battles aren't glorious. In Son of the Morning Star, one of my favorite parts is when they're chasing a band of Indians, and they get to a certain point, and the Indians scatter, and Custer and the cavalry pull up on the ridge, and he just gets mad and fires his carbine in the air, and he's like, "Give me an enemy that fights by the rules."
Right.
And it's like, no, that's the whole point. They
That's
don't
the
fight
point.
by the rules, not
So
your
it's-
rules.
But also, he's a young man when he goes to war.
Yeah.
And so war
too soon.
shapes his identity. Conflict shapes his identity.
As it did for
For
all
whole
the guys of that
generations, yeah.
generation, right?
And so what you have is once that's over, right? How do you replace that? What gives you meaning and shapes your identity after that's done?
Almost like an addiction. He was
It's
addicted
I was
to
gonna
adrenaline,
say,
and it stops.
fame is an addiction.
that.
And you look at the war
yeah.
balance.
Yeah, we know about that, right?
We do, we
Yeah,
do, we
yeah.
absolutely do. But
Yeah.
we received it
We-
early, later in
We
life,
restrain it, we hold
and,
it in.
and
but
we're,
yeah,
we're like,
yeah.
we don't care anymore. At
And
this
this is
point,
all going to
yeah.
be cut out.
This
So
is-
yeah,
All right, so the campaign. Let's get us to the campaign.
So we want to go to the campaign. So we've got the 1874 expedition. The Sioux are angry at what they feel like is the sacrilege of their Black Hills. The government and the Sioux make sort of a half-hearted attempt to get the Sioux to sell the Black Hills, but they're not going to do it. So meanwhile, these depredations are going on the frontier. Settlements are being raided. And so finally, Grant, Sheridan, Crook, some others in the administration come up with this basic plan. They're going to issue an ultimatum to the Indians to the effect of, we're going to give you until January 31st of 1876. If you're not on a reservation, we're going to give you until January 31st to come in. If you don't come in, we're going to turn the matter over to the War Department, and we're going to put troops into the field to bring you in. And that's basically the genesis of the 1876 campaign.
And then coming in the winter was kind of unrealistic as
Mhm.
well. So
Yep,
that
yep.
was a deliberate policy decision
Yeah, most
to make that.
Yeah.
There's no way they could come in,
Yep.
even if they were willing to.
No.
Yep.
If they got the message. Hey,
If they got the message, you got
And
it.
that's the thing. So it's a joke on both sides, but it kind of gives the Grant administration kind of this sort of soft legal justification
Yeah.
to turn it over to the War
well,
Department.
he said.
Yeah, right.
Remember that virtually every treaty that they had engaged in with the Native Americans throughout this period was really a ceasefire and nothing more.
No, that's
Yeah.
Mm.
The exigencies would change. I can violate the ceasefire on
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah.
Well, and if the way the Indians looked at it, this chief signs, but on behalf of who? Like, who's going to
Yeah,
follow
so-
him?
So leadership or not, you've got holdouts that are not going to sign treaties. They're not going to go to reservations, and they're going to hang out in the unceded territories. That's Sitting Bull. That's who the 1876 campaign is going after, because you've got these holdouts who, no matter what you do, are not going to go on the reservation, and that's who Sheridan and Grant in '76 want to bring in.
So they want to bring them in. They're not going in, just as expected. And they come up with this three-pronged assault that they're going. not solve. It's really after. What is their do they want to find them and destroy them, or do they want to round them up and contain them?
Well, I think the official take on this is round them up and bring them into the reservation. So it's a campaign of convergence. You've got Crooks column coming up from the south, and maybe we'll have a map or a visual or something on the video.
Well, now we will.
Third here.
Thanks for the extra work, Jim.
You got Crook coming up from the south. We're visual learners, aren't
Yes,
we?
apparently we are.
Crook coming up from the south. You got Gibbon coming in west to east on the Yellowstone, and then you have Terry and Custer coming in east to west. And so it's a campaign of convergence from 3 different directions. And to your question, Matt, again, officially the idea is we're going to round them up and bring them into the reservations. That's the official idea on it.
So Custer, I mentioned you mentioned all the commanders of each of those columns, but Custer wasn't a commander of any of the columns.
No, he almost would have been, right? This actually brings up a good point. Why does Custer almost miss Custer's last stand? And I've got a specific idea that I'm going for here, but let's kind of see.
He's testifying in Washington D.C. And while he's doing that,
He pisses off the
he pisses off Grant by mentioning his brother. And
Oops.
Grant's like, no, like you're not going. And then, essentially Custer does a little hat in hand to kind of get back into.
So what does he do to piss off the president? What's he testifying
So what
about?
does he do? So there's a scandal going on with the Secretary of War regarding kickback and graft and assigning
Scandal in Grant's administration?
post-tradership. Yeah. Another thing, Grant our Civil War hero versus Grant our president. Right? There's 2 different versions of that. But you're right, Custer pisses people off. And kind of what I thought I would go for on this is because I still encounter people who kind of look at this whole period and kind of say, Custer getting involved in politics. Custer wanted to be president. And I still encounter people and some smart people who think that. And everybody in the room, I'm glad to see, shook their head on that. So Custer doesn't want to be president. Why is he involved in this scandal? Why? What's going on?
Casey and I were just talking. I don't think Custer had any ambition whatsoever to be president of the United States. I think his butt was in the seat. He was under oath, and he told the truth.
Right. So what might Custer be going for then with a successful campaign? What's probably more practical than
A military
presidential?
Military
A
advantage.
promotion, exactly.
Secretary of
right?
War in 10 years.
Yeah, well,
Sheridan or move up in the state.
Get
Yeah.
the general take
Yeah.
it back.
Make them
Perhaps if
proud.
he wanted a promotion, he wouldn't have been so honest.
well, that's right.
Maybe, he should have thought
Yeah,
of
there's
that.
that too, right?
So what was he honest about, though? Like, what was it? Let's say I'm somebody watching at home and I've never heard of this stuff, but I'm intrigued and I'm listening to our conversation. What did he say specifically? What was the truth that he told?
Well, he testified to corruption in the administration and again to these assigning of post-traderships. And most of what he testified to has generally been characterized as hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
He did not, for the most part, witness any of this directly. He talked about, okay, we're paying inflated prices and presumably some of this is due to kickbacks. Historians like Utley have mostly characterized it as hearsay. But the problem is, it's Custer, a Democrat, aligning himself with Democrats against the Republican administration. And look, Rich, you hit it right on the head. He was ordered to testify. He tried to get out of testifying. He said, look, I want to go on my campaign. Can I submit my questions in writing? And they forced him into Washington to do it.
Yeah.
But it pisses off Grant. And and because of that, Grant says to Terry, who's the department commander, okay, Terry, you're going to lead the column, go without Custer. And then Custer, as we know, has to, as somebody I think just said, grovel a little bit,
Hat in hand.
hat in hand to get himself back on the expedition.
Now, wasn't part of that though? Also, like guys like Terry were saying, like we kind of do need him. We need the guy with the experience to be on this.
We need the guy who's willing to go charging in.
Yeah.
While we come up with the plan, we need the crazy guy at the head there.
So Custer is that guy that you want driving the action.
Yeah.
He's the guy that is aggressive enough to do that. Not because he's trying to get his name in the papers.
Right.
It's because because that's his style. That's what his command style
That's all I know.
is. And so yeah.
Can I ask you a question? You use
Me?
Yeah, I want to ask a question.
Go ahead, yes.
It may not be in your, but I couldn't open the email anyway. You just used the C word,
I was getting belligerent.
and I find that interesting.
Which
all right?
one?
When was it decided that Custer was crazy?
Oh.
When
Yes.
when did that happen?
No, well, that's not
And
what I
how
was
many
saying.
movies are there? I got to tell you, even
Yeah, no,
Son
but
of
you're
the
right.
Morning Star, he looks a little off,
Yeah.
even though, you know.
I think that was the best.
Yeah, and it was,
Yeah.
but even he had
Man,
moments
I
in there
like
where I
Matt
just
is a
him.
big Gary Cole fan.
A huge fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you mentioned, I think, Little Big Man, the Dustin
Yeah,
Hoffman
that's the
movie,
big one.
where he's outright
Yeah.
Looney Tunes.
Lunatic,
I mean,
yeah.
there's just, he's not
When
on
I was
planet.
using the word crazy more like in common speak,
Aggressive.
like, you
But I
know, we
mean,
just
there's
need the
been a lot of
aggressive guy.
depictions of him being
Yeah.
like,
No, I never subscribed to that he was crazy.
but where does
No.
it come from, do you
Sort of
It
after.
comes from the hippies.
Well, it does in a lot of
Asked
ways.
and answered.
After Liddy
Yeah.
Custer dies, so Liddy Custer lives until like 1933. After Liddy Custer dies, the historiography starts to change. You got books published titled Glory Hunter and things of that nature. So it does start changing more into, Custer got killed, chasing glory, and that sort of thing. And then yeah, by the 1960s, it's gone totally over the top with the Vietnam generation. But I think, Ralph, it started maybe a decade or so before that. Like Glory Hunter, I'd have to go look and see what year that was written, but the 40s, the 50s, I think is when it starts to shift. That's what I think.
And you need to have Custer out there doing this. And the reason, again, as I said, is because you look at the failures leading up to that of some of the officers who've also done campaigns or have done different actions, like not John Reynolds,
Yeah.
Joseph J. Reynolds,
Yeah.
right? There have been failures. And you need a guy who has a track record of success, who's aggressive against an enemy who has been known to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
You need someone who's aggressive going after them.
Well, we touched on it a little bit before too, with the desk jockeys. Alfred Terry, by that point in his career, is a desk jockey. And he knows, we didn't really touch on Custer's career as an Indian fighter, but Custer has been on the plains now from 1866 to 76.
Yeah.
Some of it successful, some of it not. And, that's a level of experience that an Alfred Terry doesn't have. So yeah, it's style and Custer's aggressiveness and his energy and all of that, but it's just flat out his experience. So Terry knows that. So when Grant says go and leave Custer behind, I think one of you guys said it. Terry realizes, no, I need him here. But Custer was originally going to command that expedition, and now he isn't. Custer's only going to get the 7th.
So, and he's under, was it Gibbon or Terry?
Terry, yeah.
And Terry and Gibbon are going to combine later on, and then Crook gets turned away or turned back by from a battle at the Rosebud.
Yeah.
And so that's there in the story for another day.
By late June, June 21st, June 22nd, they've discovered a relatively large trail that is leading down Rosebud Creek towards what would appear to be the Little Bighorn Valley. Gibbon and Terry, and for a moment Custer, have reunited along the Yellowstone. So when we do that map, it's going to be like up here on the top.
Yeah.
Custer's going to go this way. So Terry basically says to Custer, okay, follow the trail that's been discovered. And then after that, though, it gets a little squishy in terms of how Terry phrases the order and some discretion. And maybe that would be a good discussion point for the crew here.
Let's do it.
All right.
This is
Go ahead, Debbie.
reading that order strikes me as it's very, very heavy on the discretionary to Custer. He's like, it's not a direct order. He says words like, this is what he thinks you should do. He thinks that you should do this or you should proceed this way. He doesn't say, do this. It's very much this is what I'm hoping you'll do.
Say, Debbie, you mean like this? You will proceed up the Rosebud in pursuit of the Indians whose trail was discovered by Major Reno a few days since. It is impossible to give you any definite instructions in regard to this movement, And were it not impossible to do so, the department commander places too much confidence in your zeal, energy, blah, 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 blah. Should it be found, as it appears almost certain that it will be found, to turn towards it. So this is where he's saying, you should proceed up the Rosebud until you ascertain definitively the direction in which the trail above spoken leads. Should it be found, as it appears almost certain that it will be found, to turn toward the Little Bighorn, he thinks you should still proceed southward, perhaps to the headwaters of the top. So in other words, like, it's just a bunch of, like, is that what you're saying? Like,
Yeah.
you're talking about, like, all that. It's just
not a
confusing.
definitive order.
And it's
saying-
not
No.
Terry's words. It's,
Contingencies.
yeah, that's important to say. It's not Terry's orders. It's like he didn't sit down and write them down.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
yes.
it's Smith.
Yep.
Now, what could he possibly, though, when they're, like, seeking and searching, how definitive of an order can he give
Right.
someone he's sending off ahead?
Yeah.
And why do you have to do that? Why not definitively say do this or do that? Why do you
Because-
have to do that?
because you
They're
don't
not
know what's
boots on
going
the
to happen.
ground.
Right.
Right.
Like, I mean, especially so when Custer goes off, at, the furthest point he is from Terry is, it's not like it's just like 2 or 3 miles.
Right.
Like, it's not like, hey, I encountered them, I'm going to wait for your orders and sit here.
Right.
It's like 40, 50 miles apart.
Exactly.
Right.
And there's no telegraph, there's no,
Right.
so
And-
you have to have broad orders because contingency says, here's what happened, and
The order has to
And it's-
give the commander's intent,
Yeah.
period.
Okay.
There's no if practicable in there, is there?
But the whole thing
Just
is
about it. Yeah.
So Keith, how would you define Terry's commander's intent? What do you think it is?
I think it's to pursue the Indians and
All
herd
right.
them toward me.
Okay.
My column is, it's that simple, except for, and Custer basically followed it, except for turning south.
Yeah.
Is there
But he was in contact with the enemy.
He'd already did this.
is there in the wording of this too a little bit of that confidence in Custer as a you're the one with the experience.
Yep.
So, you know, we're vaguely wording this in such a way that
Yeah.
gives you the chance to use the experience you have
Yeah.
to decide which way to do this.
That's good.
And look, those of you who are active in the Little Bighorn community know this is one of the most hotly debated pieces of it. They're still arguing it 160 years later, which clearly means it's not as clearly and definitively written as you might hope it would
Yeah.
have been, because we're
Yeah.
still arguing about it.
But to me,
So-
it makes it, like we're saying, it makes total sense that it would be that wishy-washy because it has to be. You have to give Custer rein
Yeah.
to do what he deems best.
Jim, did Terry ever give a reason why he traveled with Gibbon instead of Custer?
Ooh.
Yeah,
They
that's
don't want to get killed.
Well,
Way different.
you know, so the Gibbon column is obviously by definition going to be slower moving because they have infantry with them. They do have some cavalry, but they're going to have so they're slower moving. And again, I think Terry knows he probably couldn't keep up Custer's pace. But there also are some accounts that say, you know, they have this meeting on the far west where they kind of draft the orders and put some pins on a map and kind of map it out. And there's some accounts that say afterwards where Terry admits, okay, Custer's happy now. I've given him an independent assignment. So I do think there's probably a notion from Terry's point of view that A, Custer's probably going to be the one to strike the Indians first, and that might be okay with Terry. And B, he says he's going to give Custer an independent assignment.
And don't you think he also wants an out in case things go wrong?
Well, maybe that's part of the great debate,
You know,
right?
we used to always say in Connecticut, he wrote those like a New Haven lawyer.
Yeah, and he did, right?
And he was a lawyer.
That's his
I
background.
know.
That's exactly right.
But would a precise order made a difference?
I think it would
Well-
have probably gotten him killed sooner.
Yeah.
You know, like, how precise can you be when you don't know what's out there? You're seeking the enemy out. Like, you have no idea. You have an idea where they are, but you have no clue as to exactly where they are.
Or
So
how
you
they're
got
gonna
to find
react or
them.
what's
Yeah.
gonna happen. So order or no order, or precise or not precise in the order, this is gonna unravel the way it's gonna unravel.
All right. Well, let me, if I could come back to an important point of this. Then.
Well, sure.
So I think we've all kind of understood it's not super precise, but there's a couple areas where Custer is accused by critics of disobeying, and the one that I want to come to first is Terry thinks that should it be found, as it appears that it will be, to turn towards the Little Bighorn, and we know that's what happens. The trail turns towards the Little Bighorn. Terry thinks that you should still proceed southward to the tongue and then turn towards the Little Horn, feeling constantly to your left to preclude the escape of the Indians pressing around your flank. So Terry's idea is, if the trail is going into the Little Bighorn Valley, keep doing this for a little while to go a little bit more in that direction before turning up. And Custer clearly ignores that. He just goes, he goes straight in. So I think we would all kind of say, well, that's part of Custer's character, but I'm throwing out the softball for you guys. Does anybody here, A, think Custer's abandonment of that is justified? And B, why do we think Terry would have him go further south in the first place? Because this is what people argue about.
Well, are they concerned that Sitting Bull is going to give them the slip into Canada?
Yes.
They are aware of that ahead of time? They're
Well-
thinking that they want to cut that off?
Well, I started to nod when you said give them the slip, because they're talking about going south, but then when you said Canada, but there's definitely, I mean, the prevailing sentiment here is that the Indians are going to scatter.
No one's expecting to stay.
And that's the experience on the Plains Indian fighting. The Indians scatter.
Right.
Yeah.
And doesn't Gibbon make a comment, save some for me, Custer?
Yeah. And what does Custer
And I
say?
think that's
No, I
that's
won't.
a driving, well,
Yeah.
that's a driving force throughout
Right.
and how does he know he's gonna run into the perfect storm? But that gathering on the plains was the absolute perfect storm. First, last, and only contingent that large.
Yeah.
I'm sure the next step is the events of the morning of the 25th, and maybe why he would have wanted to go right in. So, I mean, we're thinking he may have been discovered. And
Okay.
stuff. So, I mean,
Well, you know, sticking with the order though for a minute though, before you get to the morning of the 25th, Custer has already at that point abandoned Terry's suggestion.
Yeah.
You know, if the commanding officer says, I think you should still, it's Terry's soft way of saying, this is what I want you to do. So do we think Custer's justified in not doing that?
Well, the other phrase that sticks out to me is a couple of sentences
Okay.
before that, where he says he desires that you should conform to them unless you shall see sufficient
Right.
reason
Yes.
for departing. So what does he see
Yeah.
that makes him go,
Yeah.
I'd rather go this way
Yeah.
than keep going
Okay,
south?
good.
Valley
Good.
White
What is
derail.
that?
A huge
Yeah.
trail,
A
yeah.
huge
Yeah.
trail. A
Yeah.
huge trail that you think is going to break up and scatter. So if it goes this way, why the hell would I keep going that way?
Yeah.
Right? Right?
So, Carolyn alluded to the don't be greedy, wait for us.
Yeah.
Tell that story for people, because that's kind of still confuses people.
Okay. So before the 7th goes off on this trail, June 21st, June 22nd, they pass in review. So Terry, Gibbon, Custer, they're all together. They've all been reunited. Custer and the 7th are leaving. They have a little parade where the 7th is kind of passing in review. And as they're passing by, they're making jokes, expressing comments. So everybody's in relatively good spirits. So as the story goes, John Gibbon says something to Custer along the lines of, don't be greedy, Custer, wait for us. And with a wave of his hat, Custer says, no, I won't. And he takes off.
Right.
And
No,
they
I
never
won't
heard-
what? Be
and they never
greedy?
saw him again.
No, I won't wait for you?
Well, we don't know.
We don't
So
know.
maybe Gibbon should have been a little bit more military and less of a comedian and said, don't attack by yourself.
Maybe be clear.
But he
right?
didn't say it.
Clear communication, right?
He said,
Ralph?
save some for me.
Yeah. Don't be greedy. Right?
Yeah, what's that even?
Mike, you're a Custer guy, a Bighorn guy. What are your thoughts on this order?
Yeah.
Well, my opinion is that Terry wasn't going to do it. And so he put his number one man he knew who he could trust with finding and making contact with the Indians. That was his job.
Okay.
Find and make contact.
Do you think, well, I mean, he diverged from what he wished him to do, right?
I mean, I think his timetable was changed when his cover was blown, that he lost the element of surprise.
Well,
So he
before
took-
that though,
Yeah,
before
before
when he decides to follow the trail as opposed to continue south.
He was there to find Indians.
Yeah.
That's plain to see.
Yeah.
He was not there for a picnic. He was there to find.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for making it this far. Just want to remind you that Tavern Talks would not be possible without the support of the Digital History Pioneers Foundation. To help fund a second season of Tavern Talks, please make a donation to DHP by scanning the QR code below. Thank you, and now back to the tavern.
But even before the crow's nest, aren't the scouts kind of constantly warning him that it's the signs?
Yeah,
it's
there's
gonna be a
signs along the
big
way.
trail, like, even before.
Now, you know, you got to be careful too, because that's stuff that comes out later. Oh, the scouts are warning him, the trail is too big. You know, the accounts of some of the survivors, like Godfrey, are like, we didn't see anything that looked unusual. They're expecting to find a big village. It's, you know, not unusual, Mike.
And I have a question here too. A village of that size, and with the horses and the ponies they have consuming the grass, how long could they have stayed in that spot before having to move?
Right.
You mean the Little Bighorn camp village?
Yes.
The village? Yeah.
So you're right, they can't.
That's a great
because they're going to
point.
follow up the water supply. They're going to kill all the game. The horses are going to clip all the grass. So, you know, the other thing that experience has told the army, we've already talked about A, the village is going to scatter, but B, they're not going to stay together that long. So this idea that it's a Super Bowl village size of, you know, Indian proportions is just something that really no one is thinking of. And so later on, when the disaster happens, it's easy for people to say, oh, there was a huge trail and Custer ignored it and all of that stuff. But I would argue that nothing is really happening yet that is out of the bounds of what they expected to see.
In hindsight, they got trapped. In that moment, wouldn't that be exciting instead of daunting? You got them all there together.
For
Come
your,
on.
For your adrenaline junkie.
Yes.
Right?
And up to now, have they really had a chance where numbers meant something?
Fetterman.
Yeah. But you've got the regiment together, 600 guys, and the confidence is there.
And you want to trap them.
You're right. They're not worried about finding too many Indians. They're worried that they're going to get away.
And they don't know that they've changed their behaviors either. Which gets back
Right,
to
there
something
is
else.
Well, you know, that because, you know, we intentionally bypassed the Rosebud fight in the interest of time, but you're right. So Crook, if the Rosebud is outright attacked,
Right.
Crook withdraws from the field. Had Crook been able to tell Custer, Terry, and Gibbon, hey, you know, they attacked me in pretty large numbers, maybe it would have added a little caution to it. Maybe it would have. Maybe it wouldn't have. I mean, we don't know.
And also, when Custer divided his force in three and surrounded a camp, they were sleeping at dawn or just before dawn, and it wasn't as large a village as what he's got now.
Yeah.
So what works before
is going to work again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Going back into Custer's personal history, down at the Washita, he's got a large group of Indians, but they're all separated, separate camps, separate encampments. They're not contiguous.
Right.
So why not the same here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you expect to see. You know, you do what you know. If I could, before we get off the order, the other thing though that I just wanted to touch on, because you know, this myth sort of pops up in the literature then that Gibbon and Terry have told Custer, wait until the 26th and we will be there on the 26th, and therefore we should all attack together on the 26th. And by going early on the 25th, then the implication is Custer has gone a day early. Just to be clear, at least in terms of the orders. Now, it doesn't mean there weren't follow-up conversations, but in terms of the orders, what the order says is the column of Gibbon is now in motion for the mouth of the Bighorn. As soon as it reaches that point, we'll cross, etc., etc. Of course, future movements must be controlled by circumstances, but it is hoped if the Indians are upon the Little Horn, they may be so nearly enclosed by the two columns that their escape will be impossible. It is hoped that they'll be enclosed by the two columns. There's nothing in that order that says we're going to coordinate an attack on any such day.
Right. And to Mike's point, that would assume that the Indians haven't moved.
Right.
Like they're going to sit and wait for you to attack them.
Exactly. Right.
It's a very European way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So let's get to the battle.
All right. Let's get to the battle.
All right. It's fun. Mike alluded to, and then I shut him down, but now we're going to go back to him. Mike, you alluded to him being discovered, I believe, or thinking he's discovered, and that kicking him into gear.
Correct.
Okay. So he thinks he's discovered. What happens that, well, do you want to go into this? Why don't you tell that?
Go, Mike.
Come on. Mike.
Come on, Mike. Come on, Mike. Come on, Mike. Come on, Mike.
You got it.
Well, 1 a.m. he says, we're going.
All right, Mike.
High five, man.
We got him. No. But so his scouts. Let's talk about the scouts.
Already did the
Right?
scouts?
Oh no, I'm sorry, not the scouts. He thinks he's okay. There's a couple things. Sorry, scratch that.
What's happening?
A couple things. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out myself. The scouts are telling him big village,
Big
right?
village.
Big pony herd. He goes up to the crow's nest.
Yeah.
He
They're-
can't see shit.
They're approaching with a trumpetless, no fires allowed
Right.
kind
Super.
of.
Oh, that's
sneaking
great. No sabers, no fires, no trumpets, bugle calls.
Bugle calls.
Right. So they're moving in secret. They don't want to be discovered. Then his scouts tell him, "Hey, there's a huge village. What, 14 miles away?
15, 12.
14,
yeah,
15.
yeah, whatever.
How the hell you can see that? I don't know. But anyway, so
You can't.
I know. Custer doesn't see it, right? Okay. Now he gets back. I don't know when this is, but it's
Early
after
in the
he goes
morning,
out looking
yeah, yeah.
and he finds out that a mule had dropped some supplies. Guys went back to get it, and what did they find?
Yeah, so there's a couple indications. One of them is that they supposedly find an Indian rifling through a supply pack that has been dropped. Some of the scouts too also see some warriors moving on the horizon, and there's a couple of these signs are coming together and telling the scouts, who then tell Custer, "We've been spotted." Because originally, Custer's plan, going back to the Washita, repeat of the Washita, Custer's plan seems to be, okay, we're going to hole up here overnight. We'll surround the village overnight. We'll attack on the 26th. And, so again, Custer's always accused of not listening to his scouts. Well, here's an example where the scouts tell him, no, your plan to attack on the 26th is bad. You got to go now. And so they actually talk him out of plan A, and now moving ahead with the daylight attack on June 25th, plan B is actually in part the scouts' idea.
So Custer is actually trying to follow his commander's orders.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Wait,
that's
maybe.
you never really hear that
No, you don't.
part
Yeah.
of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's discovered, so he's got to act now.
Or he thinks
Because he
he's
doesn't want to
discovered.
lose that element of surprise. You want to. That's a great element to have
Yeah.
of all the elements on the elemental chart.
On the elemental scale
You
of
want
Custer. Yeah.
surprise
Yeah.
on your side.
And not only that, but if they see you and they know you're there, they'll either attack you or they'll scatter. And if they scatter and he does nothing, who are you going to blame for that?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go on, Debbie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but he does this without fully understanding what's in front of him. He's not fully reconned the village, so he doesn't know how many people he's facing.
Yeah.
You can
Right.
say
So
no
it's-
recon, right?
But according to the scouts, they're pretty certain it's a big village, right?
Yeah.
But for
Right,
whatever
but
reason,
that's all they say.
he's not buying it.
But you're right, Debbie. This is, on the list of things he's heavily criticized for. This might be 1A,
But in the past,
1B.
that didn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
They're scattering.
I mean, let's play into some biases. You can have double the amount of numbers. I can outgun you, so I don't care about the numbers, and I care about making sure you don't run away.
But could he outgun him?
Yeah.
Well,
the
He
military,
probably
does,
thinks
right?
he can, but
The
he doesn't
military
know
training.
what's in front of him.
Yeah.
the military training is based on, like the Greco-Roman background, which says that a disciplined force can always defeat barbarians.
Yeah. Until the barbarians defeat you.
Yes, exactly.
That's how
And
they
they
think.
did.
They're
Right.
I mean,
thinking
the
of
Romans
that.
didn't win all the
No,
time.
of course not. Yeah.
that's why we like this story.
Yeah. That's why we're
Well,
here,
yeah,
right?
that's a good
Right.
point. So she alluded to outgunning, and then I said, but could he outgun? Before we go further into the battle, let's set up a little bit here, because the one thing that you always hear is, well, the Indians had all these Winchester repeating rifles, right? There's 10,000 of them, and they're all with these Winchesters that are just pumping lead, and the guy, the cavalryman, the cavalry's like sitting there with their single shotguns and they're jamming and they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
But how true though is that there's this machine gun toting natives out there?
So when they did archaeology in the 1980s, and this is the last number I'm thinking of off the top of my head. It might have changed a little bit over the years. But when they did archaeology in the 80s, they came up with something like more than 200 potential different types of firearms were used by the Native Americans at the battle. And something like, I want to say what they found in the archaeology was something in the order of 30% were what we would consider to be repeating rifles. So it was more repeating rifles than we had understood prior to that, but at the same time, 30% repeating rifles, okay, 70% or not. So there's still a lot of bow and arrows, single shots,
Right.
muzzle loaders. It's a real mix. However, I'd also point out there too, if let's say you have 800 to 1,000 warriors, because nobody really knows how many warriors go up against Custer. If 30% of 1,000 have repeating rifles, that's still a big number.
It's more than he has with him.
Exactly.
More men
Was
than
it
he has.
scattered, or did one tribe have repeating, or they just scattered? Who had the arms? Who purchased them? Or
Yeah,
was
that's a good
it
point.
random?
You know, as far as I know, it's just kind of scattered. Because where do you pick them up, right?
Right.
You buy them at the trading posts from the same government that is putting the 7th Cavalry in the field to bring you in.
That's ironic.
Yeah.
Right.
Operation Fast and
Yeah,
Furious.
we would never do that.
Can I just show you though? Excuse me, I don't mean to come into your box here,
please.
Jim. Now about that
Please.
camera,
Yeah, yeah.
thank you. If I
Yeah.
just put this up here,
Move my
and
mouth,
Sam, do you
please.
want to step forward a bit so you can tell us about what we're looking at here? But here's a Winchester that
Do you want
was
it?
actually, yeah.
Do you want to slide over there? Because I got this one
Oh,
here.
sure.
The
Sorry.
box.
Stay in my box.
doing
here.
the dance.
Come to this side of me here so we can get you on my mic. So tell us about this Winchester.
It's a model 1873. It's a 6,000 serial range.
What?
6,000 serial number range.
Oh, serial number. Okay.
Yep. It puts it at 1875 production. So it's a prime candidate for maybe being there. It has a lot of features that the Indians would have done. They always thinned down the butt. They would put something odd on or take it off for the butt plate. It has
So in other words, you're saying this is thinner
Yes,
than
than
a
the
normal
production.
Winchester would have been. Okay.
Yep.
You know why they do that?
The only thing I can assume is maybe weight, because
Okay.
it's something lighter. I have a couple different firearms. They've all done the same thing. They thin them down.
Huh.
Um,
And then this is a different butt plate than
that actually belongs to like a Civil War Springfield or a trapdoor carbine.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they like rawhide. I have a couple that have that too. And I think that they didn't like stuff to get away. They would put like a thong on, or they would put, somewhere that
Odd
they
thing
didn't
to wear
lose
in a battle.
it. Yep. And something else you always see with Indian guns: extreme amount of wear.
Yeah.
From being on the saddle or
God, that's
whatever.
so cool.
Always just tons of wear.
All right. And then what does Jim have
anything
there?
different?
So this is a 1873 carbine, a trapdoor like they would have had. This is just a little bit after Custer's era. This was made in 1879.
Okay.
But same thing for an Indian gun. A lot of them are always broken the wrist. It had a sling swivel on the side. They took that off. They didn't like noise.
So Jim, you got to flip that around so the camera could see the
Yep.
Go that side and say.
damage there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And but the serial number range on this one falls in a group that were issued to the Apache Scouts,
Okay.
who went after Geronimo and captured
All
him.
right. Wow. Wow.
Yep, and same thing. That just tons of wear. They,
Yeah.
probably set in a corner or whatever. A lot of the little Bigelow ones that they couldn't take with them, they intentionally destroyed.
Right,
They had like
right.
the dump and the burn pile and all. So, yeah.
Which
that's
now
it.
is that at Jim's feet there?
Yes. Now this one is a prime candidate for Custer. What's left of it. This one is a 5200 serial range, so that's 1874 production. This one came through South Dakota. It was a guy's collection. It was sold to. It was an elderly gentleman. It was sold by an Indian to his grandfather, and it's stuff that they would have done. They could still actually use it. They've carved away the sear, and you could still fire it. But yeah, just with the number. Same thing. All the extreme amount of wear. It's actually more into.
Could you imagine the splinters you would get if you fired
held onto that,
yeah.
fired it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I interrupted you. I'm
They
sorry.
usually didn't like sights. A lot of times they would take sights off too.
Huh.
But yeah, what's left of it. So
But so you say that's a candidate for the Bighorn, but not you don't know for sure.
no, not for sure. When they did the excavations '84, they did forensic
Right.
testing, and I think it was like 200 Winchesters and or 1866s. And of course, the soldier used. They even tracked where some of them were used by the 7th Cavalry.
Right.
Then the Indians got them, and they were around here shooting back. But yeah, it would be nice to get it tested. I don't know how hard it is to do, but
Still, it's a really cool piece of
yes, it is.
history there.
Yes, sir.
All of these are.
Yep.
So there you go. I'm sure you'll let people look at these later, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay,
Absolutely. We got
cool.
lots of stuff.
Very good. Thanks, Sam.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Round of applause for Sam, please, folks. I'm sorry, I'm back in your box here again. All right, so now we got weapons out of the way. They still have bows and arrows, though, and they're pretty good with those, I hear.
Yeah, I hear. Yeah.
So-
Using it for generations, right? Probably.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the battle now. We just took our little tangent there. Go ahead. Battle.
Okay, so we've made the decision. We're going to attack midday, June 25th, which what we probably think is a fleeing village at this point. Custer makes another controversial decision. He's going to divide his command into 4 parts at this point. He's going to retain 5 of the 12 companies for himself, but he's going to put 3 companies under basically his second in command, Major Marcus Reno, a colorful and controversial figure in the story. Reno is going to essentially get orders to proceed into the valley in charge of the village, and you will be supported by the whole command. Frederick Benteen, with another 3 companies, is going to be sent off on a reconnaissance to the south. So as they're coming up, Benteen's going to kind of go off to the far left on a reconnaissance. He's going to be out of the picture for a little while, and that's going to have dire consequences for Custer. And then one of the companies are going to be left behind to manage and bring in the slow-moving pack train. So he's made the decision to attack midday. They have not done any reconnaissance yet, and now he's going to divide the command up, and again, that's going to leave him open to some criticism later on.
But again, something that worked for him before.
Yes, yeah. Well, it worked before at Washita when he split up his command, but he was not attacking midday, right? So so you're increasingly now getting into a different situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's awake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The diversion of Benteen across and on his little foray probably is in compliance with the orders.
Yeah.
At least I sent somebody
Yeah.
over there.
Yep.
No,
There's
good
a
point,
reconnaissance. Yeah.
Feel like
Yeah.
bluff in case
Yeah.
it's scattered.
Now, so you mentioned Benteen and Reno.
Yeah.
They're controversial figures too. Custer dies, they don't. Custer calls for Benteen to come quick, bring packs, etc., and he don't.
Yeah.
Well, so what's your thoughts on? Everybody, I would like to know everybody's thoughts on. Are these guys malicious, or are they making the right decision for the circumstances that they're in? Rich Snyder.
Some of the things I've read, and I want to defer to Jim, and this was actually a question I had for him. I think Reno's in over his head. I think he just has that frozen moment, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
But you talked about Benteen and the order. Come quick.
Right.
Big village. Bring packs.
P.S.
P.S. Bring packs.
Yeah.
He gets that and he's like in the saddle, and it's like, well, does he want me to go back and get the packs? Does he want me to come quick? And I
Right.
think Benteen splits the difference. He sends some people back for the packs, but he goes forward.
Right.
But he's going to run into Reno before he runs into
So the
Custer.
packs, referring to the pack mule train, which is not with him.
Correct.
So he's got to get them and bring them.
Yeah.
So it's not like he can do all these things at once.
Right.
Yeah, is what you're saying.
But Jim, doesn't he spend an extra 20 minutes watering his horse?
Yeah.
Right? That could,
Yeah,
is that
he does.
necessary?
Yeah.
Well, you try riding a thirsty horse.
Try drinking that brass water.
Try riding any horse.
But how about Reno? Because Reno opens the ball right before Benteen gets back on the trail.
Yeah.
Reno goes in with his 3 companies of the scouts, and what happens?
Runs into a bad deal. The way that river ran, by the time he got around that corner down in the valley and saw what he was into,
Too late already.
too late. Hit the flask a little bit, got a little confused, got a little rattled.
Yeah.
There's also the Douglas Fowler effect on the 70s
Yes,
in
there is,
Connecticut,
of course.
when Bloody Knife's head comes apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right
okay.
next to him.
So yeah.
It could have had, oops.
So you're referring to Custer's favorite scout was Bloody Knife. He sends him with Reno, and Reno and him are the woods. This is when they're in the dogwoods, I think, at that point, right?
Timber,
You know,
yeah.
go back into the timber, try to get some cover, and Bloody Knife's head blows off, and
Reno has with them what 100 and
Call it 150.
150, right?
Yeah, not a lot.
And like Mike says, he gets around that bend, so to speak, and then rat.
It's like they come out of the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the fowler effect.
Yeah, and then bloody knife,
It's a well-known
red
phrase.
disc in front of him.
So
what's he going to do?
And this is where terrain really comes in. When you're there, you realize that he's looking behind him to see if Custer's there. Well, Custer's not there. Custer's not there.
So
Where's he gonna
so
go?
go into that there.
If I could. So there's going to be a large body of Custer fanboys and fangirls watching this video who will unilaterally blame Reno for stopping his charge into the village. So again, how Reno described his orders later was essentially he was told the village is ahead of you and on the run, charge and you will be supported by the whole outfit. But Reno doesn't charge. He comes around that bend, he gets onto the flask, maybe takes a nip or two from the flask, and he stops and dismounts. Now that's not a charge. Now we weren't there. I can't say whether or not that was justified. He thought it was justified, but Reno's going to be criticized by a lot of people watching this video for that. Any strong thoughts on that? Do we have anybody who's sort of thought this problem through and has any take on that?
What does the train look like?
It's flat.
I mean, I
Could
just
we
know,
have seen?
I just feel like from our time out there, was there not the horse herd was kind of being kept over on that side, and there were more warriors forming. So there's kind of a flanking kind of going on.
Right.
Yeah,
I just think it's a fight that kind of influences his retreats. I mean, I think the situation forms in a way where he knows he can't just run through it.
Yes.
So,
He can't run through. He can't get to the left because, like you said, he's being flanked, and you look behind you, and you have these bluffs. So
Well, yeah, he commits the mistake
Yeah.
that was made multiple times through the battle. He lost mobility.
Yeah.
Right.
yes,
But it happens pretty early, doesn't it?
Yeah,
In
it's
the
the same
70s and 80s, Reno is ostracized for this. I mean, the immediate short-term historiography is, yeah, this guy left Custer out to dry.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What is Reno's history before this as a soldier, like, or an officer?
Yeah.
Is this the kind of thing he typically does?
Was it? Am I thinking of the right guy? Didn't he have some issues? I don't remember if this is prior to or after, but issues with the drinking and the ladies and inappropriate.
What leads up to the Little Bighorn? He's got a good record in the Civil War, primarily as a staff officer. He's spent the 70s on sort of detached duty with the 7th at different times, railroad surveys and that sort of thing. No direct combat experience.
That was going to be my question.
Against
has
Indians.
he ever led men in battle?
No,
And
not to this extent. A little bit in the Civil War, but that by now is 10 years ago, and not to this extent.
It's rusty.
So maybe,
not against
I was going to
Indians.
say, maybe this is him freezing and
Maybe.
panicking because suddenly he's in this situation and he's in charge and he has no clue what to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
a
no, he
bad
has a clue what to
situation.
do, but it's not to go to battle, it's to not go to battle.
You gotta remember, he's going up against the best leg cav in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's invading their hometown. Like
yeah.
they're
And
pissed.
he's on their doorstep.
Yeah.
Right.
We
They
talked
know the
about
area better than
the
him.
motivations of the Federal Army, their confidence, but we didn't talk about Deer Medicine Rocks and Sitting Bull's vision.
Yeah.
The Indian influence is
Right.
just as trumped up and thinking that they know they're going to win, dude.
Yeah.
This is their home turf. They know
Right.
the area far better than the cavalry.
And they're willing to die to protect it.
Yeah.
And
The
Caroline
cavalryman's
mentioned
not
before,
willing to die to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like all of them aren't.
The good medicine. They come into this. They have good medicine for this battle.
What is this side conversation you're having? What about the good medicine?
We're talking over here.
Yeah, I know. Wait, no, just say it again so that we get it for the cameras.
She mentioned the medicine that they had before, and then Casey just mentioned it. That they're feeling good.
Yeah.
They've got
It's a good
momentum.
day to die.
They're winning. They don't care. They're going to protect their homeland
Right.
because they have this medicine and these visions.
Yeah. Right. Sitting Bull has a vision of
Right.
hundreds of soldiers falling into the village.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we can't forget that they failed this is literally their families.
Yes.
Right. At stake.
Right.
And their families are
Right.
right next to them, by the
Right.
way.
Right,
Yes. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, when they interview the warriors in the later years, the warriors talk about, we were angry. You know, these white men were right on our doorsteps, scaring the women, scaring the children. We were angry.
And I know everybody likes to go back and forth, what should Reno have done? But if he had gone into the village, I think we'd be talking about a lot more people.
There'd be
losing
two
lives.
battalions
It would
that
be
were
like, oh,
wiped out. Yeah,
Right.
would have been swallowed up.
Yeah.
Well,
We
there's,
might not know anything.
you know, also like you talk. Somebody mentioned that this is their families. Was it you that
Yeah.
mentioned this is their families and they're willing to protect their families? How about when you are one of the Sioux, or maybe it's Cheyenne, I forget, and you find your daughters come home holding your brother's head by his ponytail, and your brother was Custer's favorite scout. Like, is that right? Did I get that story right?
I think it's the
bloody
general-
knife
yeah, I
story.
think that's the general
Supposedly,
idea, yeah.
these two little girls found him, not knowing it was their uncle, beheaded him, and walked him home by his braids, I believe it was. They were both each holding a braid. And when they brought it to their mother, the mother was like, oh, that's my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in the
It's a
bigger
different culture.
in the bigger picture on that, yeah, you know, that cultural difference, knowing that if you get captured, if you're wounded and you're left behind on the field, you're gonna get scalped and mutilated if you're lucky,
Right.
you know, and beheaded and genitals disfigured and all that stuff. So there's a fear factor in the soldiers.
Yeah.
And people, that could potentially cause panic, right?
yeah.
And just add on.
So
right?
do you think, how many of the soldiers with Custer, that, you know, they all died, but how many of you think were killed by the Indians? And how many of them were like,
You know, I'm sure, you know, if we look at something like the Civil War, where most of your casualties are wounded, right? And we know with Custer, there are no wounded. I would presume a pretty good, significant proportion of them were wounded and left behind. You know, the most heavily mutilated guys, I would tend to think, were the ones who were wounded.
right?
You know, they're going in, they're
Right.
finishing them off. They're playing with this guy who's still alive. Let's pump 50 arrows
Yeah.
into him, sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
torture.
I would think when you see a guy who's really hacked to pieces, I would guess he was wounded.
Yeah.
And it's what's the number? I don't know. but
No,
it's-
of course.
it's
There's no way to
significant number.
know.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of confirmed accounts. The Indians talk about the guy riding off and
Yeah.
kind of breaking away and he shoots himself in the head.
Well, I'm just thinking, putting myself in their shoes, and I'm by no means brave, but if I were surrounded by people who were fierce fighters, right? And there's no, okay, timeout. Like, there's none of that. It's, you're gonna, if they get
Yeah.
that close, you're dead
Yeah.
anyway.
There is no white flag.
Yeah.
There's there's no white flag,
You
and there's
didn't-
no
you're not fighting
exit.
competitors.
I'm surrounded. So what am I gonna do? I don't know. It just dawned on me, like maybe a good chunk of
I guess
the
the main
dead
thing is
were
like there's no agreed upon rules of war.
right.
And we're like
That's
judging
terrifying.
that by
Yeah.
nowadays where we are supposed to have those.
Yeah, we
Well,
don't.
we've even let our imagination with Custer's Temple, and some people suggest
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
maybe as
Yeah.
well. You know, I mean,
Well-
imagination runs wild.
Somebody mentioned Reynolds before, Joseph Reynolds, not John Reynolds,
Right.
in the fight on the Powder River in March. Reynolds had captured a village, abandoned it, left some wounded behind on the field, who got hacked to pieces in front of the rest of the regiment. And this got out in the army. You know, word of this got out. Reynolds was court-martialed because of that. But the idea then that this may be Terry even telling Custer at one point, for whatever you do, hold on to your wounded, because this idea of, you know, what's going to happen to the wounded was pervading the mindset of the guys in the army.
So Reno is thwarted.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's a good way to say
Okay.
it. Yes.
Reno is thwarted
Yes.
and falls back, and Benteen's on his way. Custer is running. Where does he? So what's he doing now? So
Yeah.
he's supposed to support Reno, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the idea. You will be supported by the full.
The question
whatever
is
hell it was.
how, and how does he define support?
Right.
So yeah, Reno's gone in kind of on the left side of the valley. Custer's moving north on the right side, on the opposite side of the river. And what's he intend to do? Well, we don't know because nobody survived. But is he coming in to try to hit this village in the flank? That might be very logical. Is he trying to move north and grab the non-combatants, which is a strategy that's worked for him before? Is he trying to do both? You know, we don't know, but he doesn't come in behind Reno. And Reno says, I expected to see support from behind, and it didn't happen. And that's part of Reno's decision to basically get the hell out.
So, do you think that was just a miscommunication when Custer tells him, yeah, I'll support you with the rest of the command, or what do you think that's?
Well, you know, there's a lot of schools of thought on that. Some people think, no, Reno should have understood. Some guys in Reno's command would say later, we saw Custer moving on the bluffs. How could they see it, but Reno didn't? Other people would say, you know, this is Benteen coming back to the trail. So that if, you know, Custer might be thinking, well, Benteen is going to be back and that'll be your support from behind. So there's a lot of different thoughts.
But does Reno, but wait a second, Benteen coming back, when was he supposed to come back before giving that order?
Well, when Benteen got sent off, again, Benteen says later his order was valley hunting and it was kind of a useless order. But one of Benteen's lieutenants said later, no, the order was go look, see if you can see the valley, and then come back to the trail.
Okay.
So there might be an expectation on Custer's part that Benteen is closer behind on the trail than he is. Or the note from Giovanni Martini, Benteen, come on, be quick. You know, that doesn't necessarily say come to Custer, that just says come on to the village. So again,
that's a great point.
There could be an expectation that Benteen's going to come in behind Reno.
That is
again, it's all speculation.
But we don't know, right?
Yeah,
Do we know when the Martini order was sent? The order to Martini?
Yeah, so Custer gets up on the bluffs. He views this village from some high ground. By that time, again, depending on what timeline you want to go with, Reno may be engaged. He may be just kind of getting started to get engaged. But they view the village from some high ground on the other side of the river. The message is dispatched. So Martini leaves. Custer goes on. Nobody with him. No white man with him will survive.
Biggest favor Custer ever did for anybody was for that Martini guy. Right? Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, so then after that, they're gone into oblivion. And now, so Reno goes up to what is now called Reno Hill, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When Benteen returns, doesn't he kind of describe Reno as crazed?
Absolutely, right? Disheveled, his hat is off, he's lost control of the command. The guys are coming up the hill all in disorder, totally blown out. And so Benteen coming in with that order from Custer to come on, Benteen though comes on Reno first, and Benteen's got to make that decision. Do I go on or do I help reform Reno? And Benteen stays with Reno, which saves Reno's command, but pretty much seals Custer to his doom.
So, do you think because Reno is in such bad shape mentally, or at least to Benteen's estimation, that this is why Benteen is going to hole up there? And,
I think it's a big part.
It's just strength in numbers.
Yeah.
Now, they can't see where. How far away is it?
That was going to be my question. Was what's the distance between the two?
I've never been there. I've not seen the ground.
So it's 4 miles from what we call Reno Hill today to Last Stand Hill. So let's just, for sake of argument, at that point, maybe we'll say Custer's 3 miles away at that point. You know, he's moving north. He's not at his last stand yet. Benteen would confuse the record later. Benteen would say later, well, I think by the time I got that order, Custer was already dead. And that can kind of confuse, but he's not.
Yeah, okay.
When Benteen and Reno rejoin on Reno Hill, you know, they start getting the commands together. They issue orders to bring up the pack train, and they hear shooting off in the distance. They hear firing. They hear Custer's last stand probably beginning.
Right.
Now they got to make a decision. Do we go forward or not?
Yeah. Interesting. Anything? Anybody? Anywhere?
So they can't really see what's happening over there.
Right.
Nobody's got field glasses.
Well,
No,
there's
but it's
hills and
the
stuff.
hills.
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
way.
yeah.
It's not a flat.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But they can hear it.
Yeah.
They can hear it, right?
And so my feeling on this is Benteen gets a lot of bad press, especially with the Custer fanboys, right? But for me, in some ways, I don't blame him for the call he makes. Because, to be honest with you, if he rides forward, it's counterfactual, okay? If he rides forward to Custer, and Reno is still in bad shape, Reno could still be wiped out. He could move off with Custer, also get wiped out, everybody could get wiped out.
Yeah.
And so him making that call actually saves what could be saved.
Oh,
of the
sure.
Senate.
Yeah.
So, any military vets in the audience tonight? I know of at least one. Okay, so the order. Now, again, we're sort of taking an 1876 order into 21st century. Benteen, come on, big village, be quick, bring packs. What do you think of Benteen's decision?
I agree with it totally.
Stop with
He
Reno?
came up.
Yeah.
He would wait. He got ammunition brought up from the packs. Pack train reunited with the combined commands of 2 battalions, and they moved out to support Custer.
Mhm.
Weir was already out
That's right.
looking at the Custer debacle
Yeah.
for a good solid 30, 40 minutes while they were, basically getting their act together on Reno Benteen Hill. I mean,
What about Sergeant Knight sending that message back
Yeah. Okay.
earlier?
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, Benteen's timeline, he kind of drags his feet when it's a wrong time to drag your feet.
Yeah.
what?
I mean, he kind of drags his feet on the Custer issue until Terry's looking at him the next day saying they're all dead.
They're all
on that
dead.
bill.
Yeah.
The entire time,
Yeah.
It's kind of stonewall like Custer.
You mentioned Captain Weir. Tell us about that for the people at home.
Well,
Captain Weir, we just threw him out there. We never talked about him before.
when they were forming in the Reno Benteen battalion's area, one company, basically without orders, against orders, contravening orders, took off Captain Weir's company. Now, Weir and his sergeant went before the rest of the company. The company itself thought that he had the orders to go forward, so they followed him. They get up to what's called Weir Point today, where you can see virtually the entire Last Stand battlefield. And they were there for, depends on who you're talking to, 20, 30, 40 minutes looking down on what was happening. And I will note that nobody tried to go further than the base of Weir Point to approach Custer.
So a couple points there. How do you like that for your command at this point? One company just says, I'm
Just
leaving,
rides off.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's chaos.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
Benteen at that point sees we're going off and Benteen mounts up, right? So what are you doing with Reno? So it seems like at this point command is clearly broken down. But the other thing then, Debbie, back to kind of your comments before about what could they see and not see. This Weir Point is a hill. It's a series of hills about a mile north of Reno's position. From there, now you're talking 2 to 3 miles to Custer's battlefield. You can see something at that point. So these guys probably get up to this hill, a couple miles from Custer's last stand. They can hear it. If you can't physically see fighting, you see dust and smoke
yeah.
and
The
people
two things that don't
moving.
they comment that they
Yeah.
see people shooting into the ground.
There's an,
Well,
Oh, right.
and the only way to see people shooting into the ground, we tested that when we were out there.
yeah, we did.
We had an 1877 handheld telescope,
Oh, that's cool.
10 power,
Yeah.
and by the way, you can see.
Really? That's
Weir,
very cool.
and Weir's a Custer lover too. You see him
Yeah.
with the
Right.
main
Yeah.
issues come up there.
Yeah, right. So that's why he wants to go. He
It's a
wants to help his
thing.
buddy, right? Yeah,
So you're
but
basically seeing what's in front of you and going, there's nothing I can do for that right now.
That's exactly right.
Exactly.
let's pause for somebody's cell phone. No, just do. Was that you, Dr. John?
That's my ringtone.
Gary Otis is ringtone.
You
That's
guys still
awesome.
awake back there?
Yeah.
Good to see a couple heads. You guys still with us? We could talk about this all night.
I know. I think
Right?
that's looks like that's what we're doing. All right. So the one thing so Reno and Benteen, they're up on Reno Hill
Yeah.
overnight, right? Through the next day. And the Indians aren't leaving them alone. It's not a full-on attack or anything. They're really just harassing them, correct?
Well, yeah. So I mean, a lot of Custer fanboys leave the battle at June 25th after Custer being killed, and that's too bad. It's a 2-day battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Reno, Benteen, the other 400 members of the regiment are holed up on this hill in through most of the next day, and the Indians, for the most part, are shooting at long distances. Benteen, during the course of the day, is going to lead basically 2 charges to kind of push push the natives away from the perimeter a little bit. The men are tired, they're hot, they're exhausted, they're in the sun. And then later in the day on the 26th, the village starts to pull out. But, before that, it was still touch and go for the remainder of the regiment.
And someone had mentioned before we started that a lot of the Medal of Honor recipients got the Medal of Honor for going down to the creek to get water.
Right.
Because and you're baking in the sun. I would imagine that's pretty important.
Yeah.
And they had wounded.
They got wounded. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
So
That's right.
Yeah.
are the Indians basically continuing to take pot shots at them to give the village time to get out then?
Great question.
Maybe a little bit of that. It brings up a point that we didn't touch on. When the Indians did fight, tactically, it was not Hollywood charges, and cavalry, and they would tend to fight in long distances. So a lot of what the Indians are doing on the 26th is actually more typical than what you've seen at the Rosebud and that sort of thing. But yeah, Debbie, I do think by the end of the day, they are doing that. They're starting to give the families time to break down the villages and get out of the valley. And by late in the day, we see other soldiers coming in from the north.
Now you
Gibbon-
really need to get out.
Gibbon and Terry have arrived, so they get up, and they probably could have cleaned the Gibbon Terry column out if they had wanted to, but they elect to get out.
So it's the next day that Terry arrives, the third day, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned before that he's the one who's kind of basically saying to Benteen, no, Custer's dead. He's over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it just looking and seeing a bunch of dead bodies, or did he already come upon them? Who were the first U.S. soldiers to discover?
Yeah. So some of the Gibbon Terry scouts, because now they're coming into the valley from the north end. Custer's last stand is on the north end. Reno Hill is on the south end. Gibbon and Terry are coming in from the north. So they're more or less passing Custer's last stand. And the scouts, they see these white objects in the hills, and they go up and they count them, and they realize it's bodies, including Custer's.
And a lot of them are mutilated beyond recognition. Custer, not so much.
Yeah. So Custer, for whatever reason, was apparently not scalped. Now there's other. So he was shot. He was found with a gunshot wound in the head and in the chest. The body generally was not mutilated. Certainly not like others, like Tom Custer, who was smashed beyond recognition. They do find there's an account that says Custer maybe had a thigh slashed, maybe a fingertip cut off. There's one interview that says he has an arrow driven into his groin. There's that account of the women piercing his ears with sewing alls. I think that might be more.
Not his ear lobes, his eardrums.
His eardrums.
Yeah.
They're not piercing.
Giving him earrings.
Yeah. But bottom line is he's not mutilated as heavily as some others, and he is relatively easily recognized by the guys when they see him.
Right. His brother Tom, though, he's only recognized by a tattoo. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Tom Custer's head, which was found on the hill near George. Tom Custer's head is supposedly smashed about as flat as a hand. The body is terribly disfigured, mutilated. When they're moving the body, I think an arm falls off or something like that. You guys have to remember too, this is Montana's sun in the middle of June, so the bodies are black, they're bloated. Somebody says, "Hey, look for a tattoo with some initials," and they find the tattoo on his arm, and they say that must be Tom. So that's the best they recognize him.
All right, I have a question for you, Jim. So the 7th Cavalry, we're talking about Weir running away, right? Not running away, but going off without orders. The 7th Cavalry, prior to the Little Bighorn campaign, remember we talked earlier about how a regiment would be scattered out at different outposts?
Yeah.
And the commander would be in some city nearby. Did the 7th operate together as a full regiment a lot prior to this, or were they scattered about? Because it doesn't seem to be a lot of cohesion.
Carolyn, you had the answer?
Custer tended to keep the people he liked with him at Fort Abraham Lincoln. Benteen was not one of those.
Yeah.
And I think that's a valid point about, operating in cohesion. And there was a lot of backbiting and and rivalry and hatred,
Yeah.
general hatred within the ranks, the officer ranks of the Second Cavalry. So.
And if you're not into this, there's the mystery of what happened to Custer. There's the personalities too. The guys backbiting.
Yeah.
What makes it such a
It's a great
interesting
story.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, so do you think that there was a last stand here? Or does it matter? Or was it just a massacre?
No, absolutely. The archaeological evidence, where Custer fell, Brian Pahanka book, awesome book because they traced the steps. And so reading all the definitives and then seeing a picture book like that where you go through how they found those bodies.
Yeah.
And then with the archaeological digs and the cartridges that were found, they set up perfect defense perimeters. The archaeological evidence really shows how Gaul came around the coulee, the medicine coulee, where Keogh had the horses.
Yeah.
And they can see the amount of shots that were fired up there. And you can just put it all together. The archaeological evidence is very strong.
So that they attempted to make a stand, or that they did actually?
They set up defense perimeters. The best that they could do is they retreated up that hill.
Right.
From Calhoun's Hill up, and they gave it a good fight. They gave a good. There's a lot of cartridges spent.
Yeah.
There could
From
have been
single
a moment
shot
where
carbine.
Custer says, this is where we're making our
They say at the end, just got done finished William O. Taylor's book, and when Custer was killed, they knew that was the end. There was no hope from that point on. It disintegrated.
So you see it as, do you see Custer's final fight up on Custer Hill as something more akin to what Hollywood has depicted, or something more akin to just?
I've never seen a movie.
You've never seen a movie about Little Bighorn?
I'm a virgin.
Any movie or just a Little Bighorn?
Yeah, wait, what are you saying?
Star
There's
Wars?
any
Did you see that
movie
one?
or
That was
just
a Little Bighorn.
No Custer movies.
Really?
No.
Really?
No.
Well,
It's not a bad policy.
do you picture it to be like something Hollywood would do? You've seen other movies.
Sure.
Or do you think it was more just like shooting fish in a barrel at that point when
No, I think again with the archaeological evidence from the 80s and the amount of cartridges that were spent,
there was
especially from single shot trapdoor Springfields, that they got a lot of shots off. Even guys like Isaiah Dorman that were down with Michno, that they can see the amount of shells that were around them, the shells that were underneath them. They put up a good fight.
Yeah. So it wasn't just
It wasn't just an annihilation.
Good. Okay, I agree. Anything else?
And that kind of ties in with when Weir went out on his own.
Yeah.
They could hear it. Everybody around there, that whole inquiry, the guys didn't step up to the plate and weren't honest for several reasons.
Sure.
And
Well, I don't see how they could not hear it, because we keep talking about the guns going off, but there's the noise that the Indians are making.
Screaming.
The eagle the eagle wing whistles,
Yeah,
just the turmoil.
So that would be very loud.
It's more than gunshots in a battle that you're hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be heard.
Yeah, sure.
Those hills amplify that sound, bounce that sound off of it.
Okay, so everybody agrees it was more or less Casey.
I mean, if there wasn't a true last stand, there definitely was a cohesive last attack, which I think we have to, from an Indian perspective, in that moment where they're coming up deep ravine through the coulees, and the Yates wing and the Keogh wing, everybody's staring that down. I don't know how tight they got together, but there was one final swoosh that took place. In 2013.
I agree with that.
Yeah. A last attack.
Yeah.
All right, so it hits the news. Custer's gone. It's right around 4th of July.
Centennial, as we said,
7th of July, Centennial. And everybody's all, oh my God, Custer. But one who really was brokenhearted about it was his wife, Libby.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we know of Custer comes from her. Never married again. Tell us about Libby Custer and Custer's legacy.
Well, Libby Custer, she's going to go on to write 3 books.
Which
About-
you're going to write about the Little Bighorn
Like with her husband.
Sunday,
Yeah,
Sioux.
right.
That's right. Just
Yeah,
wanted to remind you. Go
All right,
ahead. I'm
thanks,
sorry.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that moral support.
There you go.
So Libby's going to go on and write 3 books. Really ideal versions of her husband, of life with her husband, of life in the 7th Cavalry. This is a woman who, when her husband dies, really has no career choices at that point. Yet when she dies in 1933, she's going to have an estate that would be worth something like $2.5 million today. So I wish my writing was that successful.
Yeah, really. Holy.
So she's a big defender of her husband, and part of the problem for the historiography is a lot of anybody in the army who would maybe criticize George, they keep quiet while she's alive out of deference to her, and because she lives till 1933, she outlives a lot of them.
Yeah.
So she has a huge influence on how he's viewed today, how he was viewed at the time, and even though how he's viewed today, although I think probably the influence wanes a little bit. I mean, when was the last time the kids in school were reading Libby Custer?
Just last week.
Just last week. Right. But she's got a podcast,
Yes, of course she does.
YouTube channel.
But for the 20th century, at least, she was a big influence on his memory,
Right.
and how he was remembered, and people who wouldn't attack him because of it.
Yeah.
And they don't have any kids, right?
No.
So he's her whole world.
Yeah.
She said before she died, her biggest regret was she didn't have a son to carry on the name.
And family members killed on that hill also.
Yeah.
And walls. And
That's a good point. Yeah. Just the other family members that died
Actually,
with
the majority
Custer.
of their family died.
The
Right,
only
except for the
the only
Nevin
brother
there.
left was
Yeah.
Nevin.
Yeah.
Well, they're all dead now.
They
So, yeah, Rich.
Other than the Reno inquiry, Jim, was there any political fallout? Not per se for Custer's last stand, but go back to where you started about and I've heard a term secret meeting that Grant had with the Brain Trust.
Okay.
Was there ever any congressional, or did anybody ever, or did that just?
Well, the Reno Court of Inquiry is the big one. What happens in the immediate aftermath, and Ralph touched on this about 3.5 hours ago. But it's true. So in the immediate aftermath, public sentiment is like, we gotta solve this. So Congress authorizes more troops. Sheridan, with help from Sherman, Terry, these guys close ranks. They more or less start blaming Custer. So you have that aspect of it. You're going to blame the dead guy who's not around to defend himself. But Congress, from that perspective, they start authorizing more troops. Eventually, they're going to put even more pressure on the Sioux to get rid of the Black Hills, which will happen in, I think, 1877. So that's kind of how Congress views it in the aftermath.
And that's huge,
Yeah,
because up until this point, they've been stripping away the army. They've been downsizing it. And here, after this response, it's like, no, we need more troops in the field.
Yep.
I mean, that was a big course correction, as far as not correct, but a directional shift in what they were doing.
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit, Ronald McKenzie comes into play.
Yeah.
He's kind of a relentless campaigner. Nelson Miles gets involved. He's a relentless campaigner. The whole thing, which we didn't touch on, originally Sheridan wanted the 1876 campaign to be a winter campaign. And one of the problems Custer runs into is going into the field and fighting in the dead of summer. But Mackenzie and Miles are going to pursue now these Indians into the winter of 77, and it makes a big difference in wearing them down.
Yeah, it really immobilizes them. Yeah. All right, so back to the beginning. What is our opinion of George Armstrong Custer?
Well,
Ralph.
Indian policy wrap up permitted. From the Red Cloud fanboys.
My milk is warm at this point.
It's curdling now.
I'll make it one sentence.
Good.
Go ahead.
U.S. Supreme Court 8-1, 1980. Become Red Cloud fanboys. Rule that the Black Hills should be returned to the Indians. They can't be, so they should pay them $100 million.
Right.
Pine Ridge Indian Reservation is the poorest county in the United States. 80% unemployment, and the Lakota turn it down.
Huh. Really?
Yep. They want it back, but
Well,
you know,
okay.
we got Mount Rushmore, got a park, so screw
Yeah,
that, you know, kinda-
right. It's not happening. So, take two. Back to the beginning. What do we think of George Armstrong Custer? What is our opinion of him?
Did anybody change an opinion tonight?
Yeah.
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 Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, Ralph's changed his
lightened up on
opinion.
him.
What?
I lightened up on it.
You lightened up on him.
Wow.
Anybody else?
No.
Mike
I would
Lentz?
say not necessarily from tonight, but preparing for tonight. Because I always compartmentalize these two sides of Custer, the Civil War side and the Indian War side. And going into this and reading more about his Indian Wars career, I've softened up on it. I no longer say he has blood on his hands for Washington.
Like you did at the beginning of the
exactly,
night?
like
Okay.
I did.
Yeah.
That's what I had growing up, especially being in Colorado with Sand Creek being there. Okay, and so that was my influence. But looking at the evidence around Washington, at his post-war Civil War career, he was a soldier executing his duty.
Yeah.
That's simple.
And I know you know this. I just want to make this clear for all the people watching because we just equated Custer and Sand Creek. And I know a lot of people will get confused by that. Just to be clear,
Right, yeah,
Custer
yeah.
had nothing to do with Sand Creek. That was somebody else.
Mike's just saying that.
No, I know he
yeah.
knows that.
Because he grew up in that.
Because he grew up around
Just
that.
to clarify, though,
Yeah.
for people watching.
And also because the famous chief that was killed at the Washita is Black Kettle. And Black Kettle was in charge of the village at Sand Creek that was attacked by Shivington in 1864. So
Poor
there's
guy
that
had bad
through
luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say he's an American hero. I will say he's an American icon. I think he represents. I mean, he's on the short list of 10 or 15.
What is your?
individual-
Let me just stop you. What is your definition of an American hero?
Ooh. I think. I mean, the simplest way is probably overall most of the things they contributed were good or like noticeably for the general will. I don't think you can do that with Custer per se. I mean, but I do think he's on the short list of 15, 20 individual American soldiers that most people know by name.
Yeah.
And to transcend that, to do that for 150 some years was pretty
But
iconic.
could you say that if in his time he would have been an American hero because what he was doing was for the good of his people?
Maybe in that period, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably true for most
Right.
historical figures that we deal with day to day.
But our period wouldn't be without his period going the way it went.
for sure.
So then would that heroism of his day not pass down through the ages?
It's a good point. I mean, he was doing what the country of the 1870s
Right.
expected of
Yeah.
him.
Well, it's the
You can't
frontier
argue
thesis.
that.
We didn't even address
Can't
on that
argue
when we
that.
talk about Manifest Destiny. It's Frederick Jackson Turner at the time.
Right.
It's the American frontier
Yeah.
drives the spirit of
Right.
our country.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just
I mean, basically, he,
no. I just wanted to kind of parse it because I like the way
he's
you
doing
think.
his job.
Yeah. So okay, doing his job. We got another doing his job.
He had a bad day. He trusted the wrong people at key times.
Yeah.
And it cost him his life.
But I think that doing your job thing is like a uniquely kind of an American concept, the Protestant work ethic, the
Right.
Yeah.
slinging the hammer kind of thing.
But today, for some reason, we villainize him for that.
Yeah, well,
There's-
that's what we
since
do.
this is a
Well-
Civil War friendly atmosphere,
Yeah.
there are other leaders, Confederate leaders, that to this day we still defend them and say, well, they were doing their job at the time.
Yeah.
So why do we villainize Custer so much? I'm not
Oh, there's that whole doing their job argument. And that doesn't always hold up in other periods of history.
But going back to the 1960s into 2025, today, collectively, culturally, we feel guilty about what we did to the American Indian, right? And again, going back to what we always say, Custer is the most visible guy to most people of the American public from that period, so we equate what happened with him.
Yeah.
It's what the mystery of his final moments that drives a lot of
Exactly.
Well, that's the part that brings people
Like
in,
a
right?
crime scene
Right.
investigation
Absolutely.
type
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
We love a good
Yeah.
mystery.
Yeah, I love a
As
good mystery.
people, we do.
Although it's not like no one survived to tell us there were several thousand Indians who survived. But we didn't listen to them until recently.
And for me, I mean, what have we talked about the Little Bighorn? Custer, Little Bighorn? We didn't talk about a lot from the Native Americans' perspective.
No.
what they were going through.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you know, we argue, why did Custer lose? He won because the Indians, or he lost because the Indians won.
Yes.
Right?
The Indians fought.
Yeah, because they won.
They had a
I mean,
good day.
They outfought him.
They had a good day, as Jody said, and we had a good night here with you guys. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, everybody, for watching at home. And hopefully we'll see you guys, some of you guys, whoever, next time. And you too. So thank you. Okay. Good job.